Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022. And I know as the new year um, came in, I was sitting there thinking that I hope it's a lot better than 2021 on several different fronts. And then now, as we're approaching the middle of January, it really strikes me as odd that there's a lot of similarities to 2021. We continue to be stuck politically in this country. The Omicron has once again got us in isolation. Uh, and this time, not quite as a year ago, at least for myself, the thought was if I were to get that virus, there's a not a big chance, but certainly a chance that I would die. And Omicron seems a little different that way. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
uh, our trip to Japan was canceled because the country's not open, and so the world is not opening up at all, or to a limited extent since 2021. Um, and another similarity is we're in mid-January and we haven't had any rain, and there's no rain in the forecast. In fact, we're going to be in the mid 60s this week. So again, it feels a lot like 2021 to me. My wife and I went over to Point Reyes yesterday to go hiking, and one bright spot is we went past one of the reservoirs for Marin Municipal uh, District, Water District, the Nicasio Reservoir, and it was looking good. And I looked up this morning that their reservoir, because of the rain that we had between Christmas and New Year's, they're at 95% capacity. Last year they're at 56, and a normal year is 78%. So they seem to be, at least at the moment, out of the woods in terms of the being desperate for water and slowing their pipeline project down and considering desalination. So again, happy 2022. And today we have a great speaker from Chevron. This now will be a third in a series of petroleum-based businesses where we've had Marathon speak to us, Phillips 66 speak to us, and Chevron to give us an idea of what lies ahead in their future. Plus, we have a lot of great speakers lined up for 2022. And so, Dan, do you want to highlight those speakers for us?
Yeah, we have next month, February 15th, we have a couple of speakers that are doing research and study on some new technology on wastewater treatment, which is a very energy intensive process to do treatment. But there's some emerging technologies that might catch us up and might even be energy producing rather than drawing on a lot of energy. So that's exciting for both the water and the general environmental framework. The following month, in March, we're going to have a state legislation review. That's an annual item we typically do. That's going to talk on various water and environmental legislation that's bubbling along up in Sacramento. If we're lucky, we'll actually have Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, if we can schedule her, will be part of that discussion. If not, we'll have one of her senior staff members let us know what's going on. And then the following month in April, we have a great presentation on lithium battery recycling, if we can get our guest speaker confirmed for that. So that's an issue now with all of our, from iPhones to Teslas. What do we do with all those lithium batteries? So that's coming up. We have a lot of items coming forward. We're scheduled out through June, and we have a hopper list. But of course, we always want to look for opportunities to get things that are the latest and greatest on the agenda. So if you've got something that's late breaking that's critical, by all means, let us know.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I see Kristen came online. Hello, Kristen. Happy New Year. Are there any announcements, Lindy or Kristen or anybody, any announcements at this time?
Well, it's our big week of the year. East Bay USA is on Thursday, so I don't know if you've already mentioned that. But thank you to those of you, many companies on this call who are our sponsors and make that possible for us. We're featuring a discussion with former Attorney General Loretta Lynch to kick off the leadership series. So if you don't have your access and tickets and things, please reach out. You don't want to miss it. Don't know if you have anything else to add.
Good morning, all. Nope, that was the big thing that I was going to make sure we mentioned. There is a whole series, and I'd be happy to put a link in the chat for anyone who's interested in learning more about it.
Great, thank you. Any other announcements from anybody? Okay, so we're now at a nice number of people on the call, and as a part of our water and environment task force, we have a planning committee that is a pretty large group. And one of our practices is if somebody suggests a speaker and they're able to go get the speaker, then they get to introduce the speaker. And today, our co-chair, George Smith, is going to introduce a representative from Chevron to talk about what their vision is into the future as it relates to their industry. So I'll turn it over to George.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. We're pleased to have Brian Hubinger here today. I've known Brian for a number of years. And, he is the Senior Public and Government Affairs Representative for Chevron, and he covers both the refinery in Richmond, but the entire broader Bay Area. So in that role, he focuses on fostering collaborative relationships with external stakeholders, such as elected officials, regulatory agencies, business associations, and the local community. Brian joined Chevron in 2006, so he's going on his 16th year there now. He started as an environmental specialist at the Richmond Refinery, and he brings a broad range of experiences in his current role, having held technical, business, and policy related positions within the company. He currently serves as a director on the board of the Bay Planning Coalition, as well as the board of the Industrial Association of Contra Costa County. He's a native of California. He holds his bachelor's and master's degrees in environmental and occupational health from Cal State Northridge. So Brian, with that, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, George, and welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in on a early morning after a holiday. And George, thanks for corralling me into doing this a few months ago. Happy to be here, and
Sure.
I'm excited for the breakfast meetings here, and hopefully one day we'll be able to enjoy some pastries together again in the morning. But for now, we'll do Zoom, and if we can do this without a dog or a kid entering in my background, I'll be super excited. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. How does that look for everybody?
It's good.
All right. All right, Bill. Well, thanks again for having me here today. Today, I really want to talk about Chevron's vision. You know, we're a California company, so we're headquartered in San Ramon, as all of you know, and we also have some major assets in the Richmond area, both a technology center that supports our global enterprise, as well as the largest refining complex in the Bay Area is located in Richmond for us. We have other assets in California, a refinery in Southern California in El Segundo, as well as some upstream or operations in the Bakersfield or San Joaquin Valley area. So we have we touch all the different parts of the supply chain for energy consumption throughout the state. We've been in Richmond for about 120 years. 1902 was when we were founded, and there in the city, and the city grew up around us. The Richmond Refinery has historically been a leader in energy efficiency throughout compared to other refineries on the West Coast, as well as a leader and one of the largest industrial users of reclaimed water in the region. And so, you know, we think the future is bright here in Richmond. You can see on the screen the economic and importance of the facility. You know, as the largest refiner in the Bay Area, you know, quite a few of the not only do we supply the jets, the fuel for the jets to get to the grandparents to get to their grandkids, about a fifth of the fuel consumed in Northern California is from our refinery. And one unique thing about our facility in Richmond is that we produce what's called a lubricating base oil, which is the base stock of the lubrication oils you buy in quarts at the local auto store, or in cans if you have a business that you're lubricating your equipment with. And so as a result of being, providing the energy we all need to thrive, we have a large economic contribution in the region. Not only are we procuring locally and supporting a lot of businesses that surround us, but we are always looking at improving the areas that we operate in through our social investments and, frankly, our volunteerism with our 3,000 plus employee workforce, contractor workforce. They take pride in getting out into the community. They serve on boards of Richmond, West Contra Costa, and other regional nonprofits. They can be seen painting, serving food, or doing anything else. It's almost like a part of their job. They enjoy it so much. So we're proud of that, and being a part of the Bay Area community and the West Contra Costa community in particular. So that with a backdrop there, energy transitions is a term you hear quite a bit, and it's frankly, it's not something new. It's, the energy landscape has been transitioning since it started. If you look at our refining complex in Richmond, when it started in 1902, there were no cars to fuel or jets to fuel as well. And so, the demands, consumer demands, the economy shifts and changes. And now the future of energy is lower carbon, and we firmly believe that. And so our strategy going forward currently is to really look at two focus areas. One is lowering the carbon intensity of our operations, whether that be upstream, that's kind of outlined here on the slide, or in the downstream, which is a refinery or marketing terminals or our own products. And so, what can we do to become the best steward of what some people would call conventional energy going forward? Because all reputable studies show that the fuels we use today are still going to be a part of the energy equation for many years to come. So we need to do that responsibly. The second side is growing the lower carbon businesses, and frankly, that's funded and enabled by the current operations. And so, and within the lower carbon businesses for Chevron, we're focused in four main areas. There you see renewable fuels and products that I think a lot of you have been hearing a lot about here, particularly in this region. Hydrogen, carbon capture and utilization and storage, and then a fourth section called offsets and for the emergence and lower opportunities. So what's the next big thing? I think the reality is we haven't found the next big thing yet, and everyone is including Chevron, is in a place where we'd like to be able to find that. And so what are we doing to enable that process? And I'll talk about that first. Because Chevron's had a long-standing part of the business where it's essentially a venture capital firm, and we're really focused on the lower carbon space and finding those new technologies. And we've invested over $500 million in the last 5 years or so in that particular part of the focus areas. And I think there's examples throughout the Bay Area as well, and we'll touch on those examples as we go into the other three items. But it really is important to find partner with those companies that have great ideas, bring them to a scalable solution, because the energy portfolio of the world is very, very large, and we can't have pilot scale type things. We need to be able to grow that exponentially. And finding those things, and a lot of times those result in pilot projects at our current assets leveraging the things we have in play already to learn more, to be able to understand how to make it cost effective and bigger, essentially. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by tripling our investments in this space overall in these 4 focus areas and the current operations. And we're currently slated to have about $10 billion in investments through 2028. And so that's triple what we had in the budget about a year ago. And so it's growing. It's a main focus of the organization for sure. So focusing on that, lowering the carbon of our current operations, talk a little bit about the Richmond Refinery and what we've done and what we plan to do. I think the current biggest thing that we can show that we've done and invested in our facility was our Richmond modernization project, which was recently completed. At least the bulk of the project was completed. It was had a number of components, the largest of which was the replacement of what's a hydrogen plant, which manufactures hydrogen gas for the use in the refinery to make the clean fuels we make today. And what did that project do? That project increased our energy efficiency. The new plant, I often compare it to a new car. You buy a new car, you get all the new bells and whistles, all the safety features, all the new gas mileage, better gas mileage, etc. Whereas if you just repair your old car, it works, but it doesn't get those bells and whistles. So it's about 20% more efficient than the old plant that was built in the 70s, and it really has resulted in lower emissions from the facility. We have a long-standing history of reducing emissions. Over the last 50 years, we've reduced criteria pollutant emissions over 85% since the 70s. This project has resulted in since 2018, a 30% reduction in particulate matter emissions. And also as a commitment of the project, the refinery will not have a net increase in criteria pollutants, so NOx, SOx, PM, and health risks from hazardous air pollutants. In addition, we have a physical GHG cap, so the refinery GHG emissions will not go up in the future. Anytime you have a big project like this, there's a huge economic impact. Over 4,000 construction jobs were created, over $1 billion in activity flowing into our communities. So it was buzzing around there quite a bit for a while, and we appreciate everyone on this call who had a part in making sure that project came to be, including EBLC. So thank you very much. But I think that looking at the future, that's what we have to build upon, which is exciting. And we're looking at all kinds of things within the refinery, whether that's electrification, so replacing particularly diesel-driven equipment, electrifying that to reduce PM emissions, identifying new technologies to lower emissions. So looking at something maybe that is a combustion type technology and trying to find something that isn't a combustion technology to reduce emissions. Additional modernization. So what other things can we replace with newer, more efficient versions? And water reuse will remain a focus for us. I mentioned we're the largest industrial user of reclaimed water. We have a lot of irons in the fire on this one and want to continue our strong collaboration with East Bay Mud to identify further ways to either recycle our own wastewater or enable additional wastewater treatment for use in our facilities. And then there's the renewable power supplement, solar, wind, other renewable powers to supplement our energy needs here. We create most of our own energy with cogeneration facilities and receive the rest from PG&E in our current operations. But we're super efficient at doing that, and we're looking at lowering carbon emissions there to lower it even further. So moving over to that other box where we have the focus areas of the different fuels and things on the path forward is hydrogen. And we really see hydrogen as a necessity for decarbonization. The chart you see here is the anticipated demand growth for hydrogen through 2050. And the light blue is, the top of the bar is the total demand, and the light blue represents kind of more traditional technology, non-CCS or non-carbon captured fossil-related manufacturing, and then you have the dark blue that's going to grow over time. And if you're familiar at all with the electrification, the battery electrification and EV struggles that we've had, this chart looks very similar, or even renewable power, right? So what do you have to do first? You have to build the infrastructure, right? You got to have hydrogen vehicles. You got to have hydrogen infrastructure. You got to have availability of some type of hydrogen before consumers, businesses will choose to invest in that. And so it's very similar to what we've been doing with battery electric and other electrifications of industry and other things. And so as you build that infrastructure and you have that set up, then technology will grow. The green hydrogen or lower carbon hydrogen technology will advance, scale up, because there's business opportunity there, and you'll see it grow over time to backfill the more carbon intensive hydrogen. So it'll lower the carbon intensity of the fuel, will lower over time. What we're doing in this space is we want to leverage Richmond. We want to leverage our current operations. Hydrogen is not new for us. We've been dabbling in hydrogen for decades now. There was some pilot work in Southern California on some buses, feels like many moons ago. But I just mentioned we have a brand new hydrogen plant in Richmond that has some excess capacity, and so we can utilize that to help grow the availability of the fuel. And we also have some other projects in the queue there to try to deliver that hydrogen to other places. How to get it out of the refinery, how to get it out to your consumers, and then really to break that chicken and egg predicament on the infrastructure and growth. We're really investing in strategic partnerships and doubling down on that. So you see a few of those there: Caterpillar, Cummins, Toyota, and they all have a special niche there. Caterpillar really focused on heavy duty. There's a train, a hydrogen train, a pilot project that we're coordinating with them. Cummins has electrolyzer technology and is a player in the heavy duty space. And then Toyota is a leader in the light duty vehicles. And so together, the four of us and other partners, as we grow, not only will we be looking to advance, just the availability and the infrastructure of hydrogen, but to be testing it out and growing it and finding additional partners, localities, other projects to really try to bring the hydrogen story to light. And when I talk about these companies, a lot of the things is this heavy equipment, heavy industry, heavy duty vehicles. We see hydrogen as the key to lower the carbon in that particular space. The light duty vehicles is another avenue. There are fuel cell vehicles, obviously, but these other things are really hard to electrify. It's either it's too big, too heavy, doesn't go very far, and hydrogen offers a solution to basically counter that, and you can keep kind of the status quo of a semi-trailer delivering goods throughout the Bay Area, but also keep it as the same size with the same space and weight as a conventional diesel vehicle. So we really see that as the strong suit for hydrogen, and then growing that space with green hydrogen and or what they call blue hydrogen. And we really just look at the carbon intensity of the hydrogen. So how can you lower the carbon of the manufacturing? And we'll talk about a few ways that we're looking at doing that. So what does that mean for Richmond? We mentioned the hydrogen plant and the associated infrastructure. We're looking at a future energy plaza located in Richmond to actually get that out to the consumers. So trucks, other users will have availability at a marketing terminal within Richmond and beyond. That'll be the first. And then, a couple of different projects through our partnerships with Raven SR, who's a company we've invested in. They have a non-combustion technology that can convert waste to green hydrogen. And one of the locations that they're in the process of siting is at the Richmond West Contra Costa Sanitary Landfill, the Republic Services landfill, which is next door to the refinery. I don't think you can see it in the picture. So very exciting there to have organic waste turned to hydrogen fuel. And then also a partnership with MCE that we established to build the solar farm you see on our property. We're going to look to that currently creates electricity for the grid to help offset power to tens of thousands of homes. We're going to the plan is to convert that into use an electrolyzer to take a solar to hydrogen fuel system there. So we'll be creating hydrogen fuel from these solar panels that they're on their site. And so the other parts are all about the infrastructure. So the marketing terminal located next to the refinery as well, and other small projects to enable hydrogen trucks to deliver hydrogen to consumers all over the Bay Area in a zero emission transportation methodology. The second part within the lower carbon businesses is renewable fuels. We've heard a lot about that in the region. A number of our competitors are focused on this as well. And we see it very similarly. We want to be able to co-process biofeedstocks in our own facilities, as well as grow partnerships with some of the companies you see there on the screen for renewable natural gas and compressed natural gas. And so not only do you have the gas component of that, but renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel, which are the renewable versions of the current fuels we have. And then also within our lube oil business, we want to grow that. And we have a couple partnerships there to grow the renewable fraction in the lubricating base oils we all use on a daily basis. And so with renewable natural gas, that's kind of the first focus area. We have, we anticipate a number of a very high growth. We're expanding our partnerships, increasing our sites. We have a JV that has expanded beyond California into marketing terminals for CNG. And we're looking, and we also have we're looking to market our CNG under the Chevron banner or the overhang that you would see at a normal gas station. And if you've driven to Napa recently and you've passed the station there by the airport, you've seen the transformation it's taken. That's one of the first branded CNG sites for Chevron. And we look to expand that to over 30 here in a short time frame in California. We have a couple other joint ventures with on the renewable natural gas, which is really an awesome fuel. It's a carbon negative fuel. You're taking, our focus is really on the biomethane from dairy feedstocks. So we're working with farmers to capture the methane generated cow grazing and capturing that and making it into essentially a renewable natural gas. We anticipate growing into the other spaces of, landfill and other methodologies, but the dairy feedstocks are really the focus now through our 2 JVs with Brightmark and another company called Cow Bioenergy. And that one's exciting because just in the last year, we achieved first RNG production in some farms in Central Valley. So right here in California, we're creating negative carbon natural gas and putting it into the system. And who knows where that can go? You know, as that business continues to grow, that can feed into a facility like Richmond, and then you're using carbon negative natural gas to create hydrogen. And so it kind of builds on itself and becomes pretty exciting. The second piece is the renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. We're seeing rapid growth there, 3 times growth of our current operation in just a few short years. We view this as a way of being very capital efficient, using our existing assets, or existing refining systems, allowing our refineries to have feedstock flexibility. So a number of renewable or conventional feedstocks, depending on what's available. And we're focused on a lot of things. So I think some things are going to come to Richmond. We currently blend renewable diesel at our facility in Richmond. El Segundo has been the first of our refineries, so the Southern California refinery, to really start converting some units to create the sustainable aviation fuel. It was the first refinery to ratably co-process biofeedstocks in an FCC unit, or fluid catalytic cracking unit, that we're aware of. And a number of things we're doing on the sustainable aviation front. In 2019, we were part of a landmark agreement with SFO to supply sustainable aviation fuel to that facility and basically grow it, 100-fold. And then an announcement with a company called GEVO, where we're jointly investing in new facilities that can create these fuels from inedible corn products. And so taking, again, an agricultural waste and creating a usable fuel in a low carbon way. Most recently, we announced a partnership with Delta Airlines, as well as Google. And as we talk about some of these partnerships, you see tech coming into play, and this is going to be a big, I think, part of how we track. And so this partnership is creating sustainable aviation fuel and tracking it from the beginning to the end to really try to understand the carbon accounting of the creation of sustainable aviation fuel. So how are we going to account for that and make sure that we're really reducing the carbon throughout the life cycle of the product? So it takes a lot of data crunching, where Google comes in, an airline, and a fuel provider. So again, some strategic partnerships to really advance the thinking in space there. And then on the feedstock side, you hear a lot of critique about the feedstock availability of all these, with all these projects coming online, and so we're identifying partners to grow feedstock, farmer, basically the whole supply chain, farmer to consumer, making sure that there's going to be availability of these biofeedstocks for these future investments. And on the renewable base oil front, you have again growth, exponential growth compared to even a few years ago. And we have a partner with a company called Novi, and they're a California company, but the exciting news has come out of Texas recently in their facility there, where last year we achieved the first production of 100% renewable base oil in that Houston facility. So exciting to see that technology come to fruition, and I think all we're going to see is it just continue to grow. And the last focus area that I'll talk about is the carbon capture side. And again, I think it's critical for a lower carbon future. How are we going to remove that carbon from the industrial processes in a safe way and keep it out of the atmosphere? I think Chevron has a unique ability with the size, scale, and experience that we have in a lot of our assets to be able to achieve some success here. And you can see all the partners that we're working with. And part of my optimism here is that we're already doing it. We're operating one of the largest industrial CCS facilities in Australia. So while that be halfway around the world, we also have a project in New Mexico, and we see potential hubs for CCUS, not only in other parts of the US, but also in California. And so we're looking to be a part of that. And then there's an exciting project out in the central part of California in Mendota, where again, we're taking, partnering with Microsoft, Schlumberger, and Clean Energy Solutions, as well as us, to basically create a negative carbon energy solution where you take agricultural waste, almond hulls, and create electricity and then sequester the carbon from that process, and working with Microsoft to be able to, again, make sure the accounting and variability, the verification of that is top notch. A number of other pilot projects that we have working with the Department of Energy to do, and Svante, to do some pilot projects in our Kern River. So taking our existing assets, creating a pilot project, seeing what works, what doesn't, what we can improve upon, how can we make it cheaper and bigger. And so those things are exciting to be working with not only private partners, but the US government. One thing locally I'll mention is a partnership we have with Blue Planet. If you haven't heard of them, they're an aggregate company, and they are through our investment and others. They're in the process of creating a Pittsburgh facility that's going to basically, you can sequester carbon into concrete and building aggregate materials. So, how can we do that? How can we grow it? How can we create low carbon building materials for, the Bay Area housing needs, et cetera. So exciting there, right in our backyard, in our county. So with that, I probably inundated you with way too much information. It's funny because we're just kind of scratching the surface here and there's so much more to talk about. But hopefully that gives you a flavor for where we're at. If you want to learn more, you can take a picture of the QR code here and I'll take you to our webpage, which basically outlines kind of what we talked about here today, as well as a lot of other details if you have questions. But
Yeah, we do.
Turn it over to George and Kristen, maybe, or whoever.
We do have some questions that just coming through the chat line, and I'll give those asking the questions the option if they want to unmute and ask the question. Gary Darling, you had a couple of questions. Do you want me to read those off the chat line, or do you want to cover those, Gary?
I can cover them. Thanks, George. So, Brian, I'm intrigued by the partnership that you have with the local landfill transfer station and converting waste into energy in Richmond. And I was just curious to know more about the technology that is being used and any challenges that you might be having in terms of air permitting, and is the focus on organics, or is it on all of the waste that goes through?
So I'm not an expert in the actual technology. I do know it's a non-combustion technology. So it's the only one that I'm aware of that doesn't use combustion to, make that conversion. So that's exciting. And from an air permitting standpoint, makes it a whole lot easier, right? And so I'm not aware of any issues we're having going forward. I know there's going to be a couple different sites planned. We're kind of more we're not on the operating side of it. I can forward some information on the technology that you can read about in a website, kind of good outline of it. I'm happy to share that with the group.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
And then Harold Mantle, would you like to ask your question, or would you like for me to restate it from the chat line?
Well, I think the last couple of slides, you kind of answered it. I jumped the gun.
That's okay. It's all right. And then I have a question for Brian, then others feel free to either use the chat line or just jump in, raise your hand. So Brian, in reference to the target of 35% carbon reduction by 2028, that's not very long from now in terms of, we're like 6 years away now. But I guess my question is, in terms of long range kind of strategic planning, does that translate into any Chevron refineries actually being shut down And if so, is there a prioritization process as to which refineries may be targeted, for shutdown over time?
Yeah, thanks, George. Good question. And so the 35% reduction on that slide was an upstream number. So you're looking at mostly our domestic oil production sites, so Permian, other fields in the central United States, as well as central California, looking to reduce the carbon intensity there of our operations. It doesn't really account for any refining. I'm usually the last to know, but to my knowledge, there's no plan to close any of our refineries. And in fact, as we talked about with the renewable fuels, I think the future is bright for our refineries. We look at this as a way to transform our facilities to create the fuels of the future that are needed and growing in a low carbon way. So we look at our strategy is to use our assets and not necessarily create new ones or shrink.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then I have another question regarding the state of California plans to phase out fossil fuels for power production by the year 2045, which again, it's in the distance, but not terribly far away. But in terms of strategic thinking and planning, how does that have any impact on major Chevron facilities such as refineries and in oil and gas production in terms of power sourcing, power usage? If fossil fuels are phased out by then, how does that impact your operating facilities during the next, 23 years?
So I think California's has a long history of aggressive policies in this front, and we continually work to evolve and adapt. And so again, the future of energy is low carbon. What does that look like? Is it going to be hydrogen? Hydrogen's a zero emission fuel, right? Tailpipe fuel. And so growing that, I think we're doing a lot of things that matched kind of the vision of California and the transition into that. And so I guess my answer is, we're setting ourselves up for success in this space. And, we've been a California company and we'll continue to do business here. And we're looking forward to the challenge and the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So we'll turn it over to any other questions. It wouldn't be a meeting without Bob Whitley asking a question. Are you still on the call, Bob?
Yes, I am. And I'm fascinated by the progressive thinking presented today. So I have no questions.
Oh, okay.
George, I got a question.
Oh, there you go, Dave.
George, I got a question.
Okay, go for it. Yes, jump in.
One of the things that he talked about that struck me that was really interesting is the fact that electrification of major construction equipment, bulldozers and scrapers and that, isn't very practical, and you're looking at hydrogen fuel for those kind of facilities with Cummings and everything. Can you expand a little bit on what the path may look like time-wise to infrastructure to be able to begin to really start fueling major construction with hydrogen?
So I don't have a lot of information on the actual heavy duty construction equipment, but the hydrogen semi trucks, for example, are probably going to be the first heavy duty type vehicles that you see. There was just an event in Oakland with Hyundai, and they're bringing these. I think you're going to see semi trucks that are currently in other parts of the world here in California as early as next year. And so that's the first thing you're going to see, and then. I mentioned, there's a rail. We're working on hydrogen locomotives, and then, I think, at scale, it's going to be probably many years before you have hydrogen construction equipment at your neighborhood construction site. So right now, it's really just trying to bring, more smaller scale, proving out the technology, proving that it works, proving that you can scale it up. those are the things we're going to see first, and then it'll continue to grow.
Okay. I noticed on the chat line that Michael Kent, he's with the Contra Costa County Department of Health Services, and he's the ombudsman for environmental hazardous waste issues for the county. He has an announcement that Raven and Republic will be making a presentation at the next Hazardous Materials Commission about the Chevron carbon reduction program on January 27th at 4 p.m. That's open to the public. And an agenda will be posted on the webpage, and he provides in the chat line the link to the webpage, so you'll be able to see that announcement. It'll be, I think, continuing to be video meetings through Zoom.
Hey, George,
So,
if I could just be more specific, that presentation by Republic and Raven is specifically on the waste to hydrogen pilot project they're doing at the landfill. It's not on the overall
okay.
project.
Thank you.
So they're
Thank you
just going to focus on that one project, not the scope of what Chevron's doing.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mike.
that'll definitely give you, I think a feel for the technology that's going to be presented and the scope of what can happen there. I didn't realize that got scheduled. I knew it was in the works, but that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I've noticed that there was a rollout of your program, Brian, I think by your CEO and several other people a few months ago. And there was very impressive presentation. This is global, right? This is not just California. I mean, this is across many other states and countries, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, this is a global initiative. In all of our assets, whether it be in Australia or here in California, I think you see a lot of the piloting and other initiative here in California, frankly, because it's policy enabled, right? A lot of these technologies aren't on the ready in a normal business process. You have to have policy enablement to push these types of technologies and these projects forward. And California, again, as we talked about earlier, is leading the way there. And so, you see a lot of these projects happening here in California for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions while we have Brian here?
George, this is Gary. I've got a question for you, Brian. A year ago, we had a presentation by the Lawrence Livermore National Lab on the paper that they wrote, Getting to Neutral by 2045. And a big component of that is carbon sequestration. And as it turns out, they have discovered that a really good place for carbon sequestration is actually in the Delta, deep into the earth there, as far as injecting the carbon. I'm wondering if you guys have connected with them, and if you haven't, I know the people that are leading that effort. They'd be, I think, quite happy to talk with Chevron on that. But I didn't see that in any of your presentation. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of it and also offer an introduction if you would like.
Well, that'd be great. We're always looking to talk to people about this kind of stuff. So I'm not aware of, I know we have partnerships with that laboratory on a number of issues. I'm not aware of anything specific with CCUS, but we're looking at everything. So we're happy to talk to them about what they know and share information. And I think there are some potential opportunities here, not only in LA and in Central California, but in the Bay Area for that, like you mentioned, in the Delta. There's a lot of work being done to try to understand geology and a potential path forward regionally for that capture.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions here for Brian? Brian,
Michael had
George?
re-raised his hand. Oh, we all talked at once. I think Michael had re-raised his hand.
Yeah, I did. Is it okay if I ask a question, George?
of course. Yeah.
Okay. So as George mentioned, I'm Michael Kent with the County Health Department. I'm the Ombudsman for the Hazardous Materials Program, but I also staff the Hazardous Materials Commission that George is part of, and I saw Aaron Weiner is on the call, is also part of. And one of the things the commission has been looking at recently is sort of the unintended consequences of new technology, specifically with electric vehicles, which have broad support. The problem of, well, what do you do with all those lithium-ion batteries when they become not usable for the cars anymore? And you kind of touched on that earlier, Brian. And so, in 10, 15 years, this country is going to be awash with lithium-ion batteries. And DTSC has got a task force that's coming up with some policy recommendations on how California could be prepared in the future for that. And I think you also, I think what you meant was that you just mentioned you needed some policy changes to help support these transitions. And so my question for you is, looking at the new technologies you're looking at, hydrogen and the biofuels, what are some of the possible unintended consequences you see in those arenas, the negative side of doing that work? And how can we be preparing to address those? Because sometimes it could take a lot of time and changes in policies and new technologies to address those unintended consequences. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
No, yeah, I think you make some good points. Again, I think the energy infrastructure of the world is so huge, right? And so you do anything at a scale that is going to fuel the world or fuel the state, you're going to need a lot of it, right? So whether that's a resource for a battery or crude oil for traditional gasoline. And so, I think a lot of the pilot projects that we're doing are trying to uncover, exactly how it all works, right? What are potential unintended consequences, or what are the trade-offs of that? As we do this more and more, we understand more of it, and we can create technologies to maybe keep those things from happening. So, the great thing about hydrogen is that it's a renewable, or you can recharge your battery, right? It's hydrogen vehicles are electric vehicles. They're just fueled by a hydrogen gas that charges the ions as opposed to a battery. In that case, you don't necessarily have to throw it away as often. And so I think it's important for us to do the due diligence as these technologies come to scale, and so we can understand all parts of the life cycle as we go forward. But from a policy standpoint, it's really enabling not picking winners, not putting all our eggs in one basket. Just as any business owner would, you usually want to diversify. You want to have the potential for hydrogen vehicles. You want to have battery electric vehicles. You want to have an assortment of things. And really, that's what we're going to need to be able to fill the cup all the way to the top where it is now, right? And offset the more conventional fuels. We're going to need it all.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, you may have missed it at the start, but part of our announcements at the beginning of the meeting, we announced that there will be a presentation on lithium-ion car battery recycling from the advisory group for DTSC, and that's scheduled for April, and we'll get out a message to everybody with information on the specific date and time of that. But we're focusing on, we've invited Alyssa Kendall from UC Davis, who's one of the leaders of that advisory group. So the other thing I was going to mention too is as far as obstacles to alternate energy, I attended multiple meetings of a proposed solar power facility in Livermore called Aramis Project, and this was several months ago. And the opposition to that was very passionate and intense, and I would say in the public speaking, it was about 50-50 as far as for and against that. So I think one of the obstacles is to alternate energy is going to be the acronym we've all heard of, right? Not in my backyard. So that's just a general comment, Michael, on your question about obstacles. I see Mr. Whitley on the line now. popped up. Bob, did you have a question?
I do, thank you. So appreciate the fuzziness between the strategic thinking of Chevron and policy making. What comes first? And so, but my question is, what does Chevron think should be appropriate policy decision-making going into the future? What's missing from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a hard question, right? Because we don't necessarily know, and I think that's what we want, to be able to have an open mind, right? Have open-ended policy that allows for the market to drive the change. And so again, not picking a winner in your policy, right? Policy should be focused on an outcome, not necessarily a technology. Technology-driven policy, stifles market creativity, private creativity, right? If I can come up with a solution that meets the objectives of the state that no one's ever thought of before, there shouldn't be a policy that prohibits that or doesn't enable that, compared to a different technology. And then consumers ultimately will choose the technology that is going to succeed. And so I think from a policy standpoint, it's looking at what are we trying to accomplish, and then letting the great minds that we have in not only our company but throughout California to try to figure out the solutions for that.
Okay, anyone else like to jump in with questions?
Barbara, you have a question?
I do, and I think I may be making an assumption regarding Bob's comment, but for many years we've always thought that we were doing the right thing, and now we take a look back, and because of our science, and we see that, wow, maybe we weren't doing the right thing, and now we're in deep trouble with the climate. So I think that it's very difficult to take a look at science today and try and predict. But maybe we have better vision and are able to do that, because you know what, we didn't do it in the past. We were not able to predict, or at least if we did, we didn't do anything about it. Just a comment.
I hear you. And we policies and regulations should be data driven, right? And based on available information, and that can come from a variety of different sources. And we have to make decisions based off of that best available information and what we think is best going forward. We don't know what we don't know, but
right.
Making sure we have the strategic research and putting money into research and development, I think, is another, when you think of policies as well. You look at our net zero aspirations, and there's a pretty big bar of future technologies, right? So there's the stuff we know, and then there's the stuff that we think we're going to know in a little bit of time or a lot of time. And making sure that that's appropriately resourced, whether that's a private company budgeting or the government enabling research and development to identify those opportunities is important.
Yeah, I think it's just looking, having climate change in our face is a clue that we didn't really do it well in our past, and maybe we can do it better in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. So as we wrap up here, we're still open to questions. I would ask our co-chairs and then Kristen and Lindy if they have any kind of concluding remarks.
So, Brian, thank you very much for presenting to the Water Environment Task Force. I think it's fascinating that Chevron is not just doubling down, but tripling, quadrupling and whatever in the hydrogen space, because I agree with you that electrification is a great concept, but one size does not fit all. And I also really appreciate the idea that we as a policy set aspirational goals, but don't tell our innovators how actually to do that. So if there's anything, Brian, that we can do to help you policy-wise, we would love to hear that, and we stand ready to do that for you. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and yeah, thank you for the support. We appreciate EBLC's continued action in this space, and this changes. This will be different next month, right? As we're talking about this, so let's definitely stay connected and move things forward, both in the region and the state. I think it's gonna be an exciting few years as these things advance and go to approvals, various agencies, and it's important that we try to enable not only our projects but other projects that can advance this space as much as possible. So appreciate EBLC's activism and support and of these projects.
Very good. All right, Kristen or Lindy, any more additional comments or announcements?
I thought Gary summed it up well, but we'll defer to our fantastic policy director if you have anything else to add, Lindy.
I just wanted to add my thanks for being here, Brian. It was wonderful to work with you to get this all set up. And then I look forward to future presentations. I can't wait to hear about the conversion with MCE and how that all kind of plays out on some of the projects you have going on locally. So I hope that we'll get to kind of dive in depth to some of those as they continue to develop. But I echo a lot of what Gary said. I think it's interesting and also somewhat exciting to hear that Chevron's really investing in hydrogen, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Okay, thank you. And we look forward to East Bay, USA again this year. Great program coming up, right?
Yes, we look forward to seeing you all on Thursday.
Yeah, if anybody needs a link or information, just contact either Lindy or Kristen for that.
And it's also in the chat if you need the link.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, everyone, the 30 plus attendees in the meeting. We thank you for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future. With that, we'll wrap it up. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Brian. Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.